Though that story in the song is fictional, it's certainly inspired by my two grandmas, who were very different people and influenced me in very different and equally wonderful ways. My maternal grandmother, Margaret Falstaff Elliott, grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, met and married my grandpa when she was 17 years old, moved during the first year of her married life to a cabin up in the Rocky Mountains because Grandpa got a job blasting the Moffat Tunnel through the Rockies. Grandma lived in that cabin by herself. Every day she would walk 2 miles down to the general store to get a newspaper, bring it home and do the crossword to kind of keep her mind active. There was a rushing stream outside that cabin, which sounds absolutely idyllic. But Grandma said listening to that rushing water 24 hours a day almost drove her out of her mind. She could never stand the sound of running water after that. They moved back down to Denver, built their house. She had 11 kids, 10 of whom lived to grow up. My mom was right in the middle. Grandma had a lot of running water in her life, raising that many kids, but she was adept. She could go into the bathroom, turn on the bathtub, leave, and knew exactly when to come back in and turn it off before it overflowed, so she wouldn't have to stay there and listen to it. The one thing she asked of my grandpa when he and the boys built the house that they ended up living in was that the kitchen window face her Rocky Mountains, because she knew how much time she was going to spend at that sink, and she wanted to be able to see the Rockies. Even though I grew up in Pennsylvania, but my mom took us out. We went out and visited Colorado a lot growing up. And I remember one summer visiting my grandma, who did, of course, a lot of laundry as well as cooking and cleaning in her life. And she and I were sitting there, we were watching TV like you do when you visit somebody. This was the era when Wisk laundry detergent was being advertised. So the commercial would show over and over again, especially during the daytime. And the Wisk laundry product was being marketed to solve those ugly ring-around-the-collar stains around men's dress shirts. So the commercial would start, and it would show a young woman, and she'd be holding up a white men's dress shirt, and there'd be this ugly yellow stain around the collar, and she'd look distressed. And the voice would say, "Ring around the collar, ring around the collar," and she'd look more and more like the scream. "Ah!" And then you try soaking it out, and they'd show her soaking. You'd try scrubbing it out, they'd show her scrubbing. Nothing works. Ring around the collar, ring around the collar, ring around the collar. Try Wisk. Then they would show bright blue Wisk laundry detergent being poured along the collar. She'd dunk it once, she'd hold it up, the shirt would be white as snow. So Grandma and I are watching TV. This commercial's been on over and over and over again. And finally it comes on yet again. In the split second between the time that the young woman says, "Ring around the collar," you try soaking them out, you try scrubbing them out, nothing works. In the split second before she dunks the shirt, my grandma says, "Tell your husband to wash his neck." Grandma! It's good advice from a woman who had to do a lot of laundry. My other grandmother, who I call grandmother, was my dad's mother, Naomi Nolte Rutherford. She lived in the little town in Pennsylvania where I grew up, so I got to see her a lot. And my grandmother was a wonderful cook. She loved to cook. And I thought she was the most glamorous person in the world because I would often stay overnight there. And when I got up in the morning and grandmother would be at the kitchen, at the stove making breakfast, she would have one of her fancy aprons on. She had a number of lace aprons, different seasonal coordinated. She would always have earrings on. She had clip-on earrings, always have costume, beautiful sparkling earrings on. And I only found out after she passed away that it was because she thought her earlobes were too big. So she always put earrings on right away, even first thing in the morning. I just thought she was glamorous. She cooked everything. She cooked Pennsylvania Dutch style, the meatloaf with the hard-boiled egg in the middle, and But one of the things I loved the most was one of the simplest things she did for me, which was, as an afternoon snack, she would give me an apple that she had cut into not the little crescents like most of us cut apples, but she would cut the apple into rounds and arrange it on a china plate, put it in front of me, and I'd be sitting on a high stool at her kitchen table. She'd put the china plate down in front of me, and I would look down at the red skin of the apple and the white flesh and the brown constellation of seeds. I called it my apple full of stars. So I would pick up the slices of apple and I would eat them all the way down to that little constellation of stars. Then I would arrange them on my plate in different patterns. Always stayed with me. She was the only person I knew who served apples like that, including myself. It wasn't until I was in my 40s, I was having people over for dinner. It was one of those situations where you're really hoping your guests are going to be late, because I was behind. I was making a salad with apples in it, so I just grabbed the apple, I threw it on the cutting board, and instead of staying upright like I usually would slice it, it fell over on its sides, and I just whacked it through the middle. The apple fell apart into 2 circles, and I was looking down at my apple full of stars. That's how you did it! My grandmother and I had a moment, and then I got the salad ready, but ever after that, in November, her birthday is right around Thanksgiving. In November, I will go to the grocery store, I will find the reddest apple I can find, bring it home, cut it into rounds, arrange it on one of the china plates that I inherited from her, sit at the window, and remember my grandmother, Naomi Nolte Rutherford, as I eat my apple full of stars.